to Sunday from 5 a.m. on Sky Arena right here. We've got a boxing buffet for you that you will be excited about, and none more tasty than Dillian Whyte versus Joseph Parker. Hi, I'm Monty, Betham, joined by the fight genius when it comes to talking and breaking down the fight game, Lightning Mike Angove. This is a risky fight, isn't it?
Oh, look, there's a reason that the O2 Arena is sold out. Eddie Hearn done a magic job in bringing these two guys together, Dillian Whyte, Joseph Parker. It's a throwback fight. Yeah. These guys aren't protecting their record. Huge risk, huge reward, and there's a good reason, too, that the analysts around the world can't divide it. A genuine 50-50 fight.
Are you surprised that so soon after his loss that this is actually taking place?
Well, yeah, he could have gone out. He could have fought a couple of stiffs along the way, guys, just to rebuild confidence, rebuild his brand, get a couple of knockouts. But this is a fast track to a rematch with Anthony Joshua. He's the golden goose right now in world boxing. And don't forget, too, that Whyte is mandatory for Deontay Wilder. So there's a couple of threads. Like I said, huge risk and huge upside. Well,
you mentioned the upside. Both guys fast-tracking a title shot at probably the cash cow right now in the division, which is AJ. The downside, we all love Joseph Parker. If he loses, what happens?
Well, look, it's a couple of years of rebuilding. He'll have to rebuild his brand. Whyte's really someone he should get across, remembering that Derek Chisora has always been the benchmark. Since Whyte beat him, he now becomes the benchmark into the top 5. If he can't beat him, it means tough fights, risky fights, and lower paid fights, and he really has a long road to hoe, at least 2 years before he gets another shot. Now, earlier on this week, I spoke to Joe and asked him why he took such a big risk.
I feel with the support that we'll be getting from New Zealand and Samoa, it's important to, there's fights that you can win. You can go into camp and train and you come out and you blast them, and then I don't think there's a lot of learning from it. I think you'll get a lot of confidence, but I don't think there is a lot of learning knowing that you're going to blast someone out. So for us to be hungry to get back to the world title, world title fight, we have to take the challenges that are out there. And I think this will be a great challenge to put us in closer to that place.
Dillian Whyte, he is a big lad. What sort of fighter is he?
Well, look, he's a brute of a man. He works fuelled by anger and emotion. We've seen that too, particularly in the AJ fight where he had something to prove. There was a lot on the line where he fought Derek Chisora, and that was full of feistiness. Notable, though, that he's been quite quiet with Joseph Parker, still needling him, but seemingly not as angry and wild. In terms of how he fights, he likes to get in there. He body punches well. He's actually a far better counterfighter than people think. He will take shots on the gloves and look to time his left hook, particularly. He gets hit on this side, he'll come back same side. And if he can negate the speed of Joe Parker, that's something that Joe is going to have to adapt to.
Very similar, Joseph Parker, 18 KOs. Dillian Whyte, he has got 17 KOs, but he knocked out 3 opponents that they share across their resumes in quicker time than Joseph Parker. What do you put that down to?
Well, look, styles make fights. Joe tends to construct his knockouts. He tends to build them, whereas, as I mentioned before, Whyte's a brute. He's going to get in there. He's going to try and get you out of there, sometimes by sheer force of will early. You've also got to take into account the fact that Brian Minto took that fight on a couple of days' notice. Minto busted Joe's eardrum in that fight. So, again, he shouldn't have taken the shot, but he looked like he was going to get him out of there in 2. It took 6. And, look, Costa Jr. has been a highlight knockout for Joe. So let's look at the quality of the knockout, not the time it took to get it.
You mentioned Dillian Whyte's been a little bit quiet in the pre-fight talks, but in saying that, the word coward, and he used that to Joseph Parker. That's some damning sort of comments.
He's been quite clever. He's been subtle for Dillian Whyte. He also said, oh, you haven't got David Higgins here to talk for you. I think that's a bit cowardly, not going out on your shield. And he's also been quite condescending. Oh, you're a young fighter. You've got plenty of time to recover. Make sure you don't bring your running shoes to this fight. So everything is angled at, hey, mate, we want you to stand and trade.
Very smart. Now, what I need from you is the strategy that Dillian Whyte will employ to beat Joseph Parker at the O2 Arena this weekend.
Well, I see the fight going in stages. As I mentioned, he's going to need to negate Parker's speed early. If he can do that, then he starts to apply the pressure. He's going to go to the body early for sure to try and break him down, drag this into the deep rounds and drown him. If he can find a rhythm with those counter shots, pressure him to the ropes so Joe doesn't have room to move, and also that takes away Joe's ability to accelerate his hand speed and move forward. One man who's fought both of these fighters is former Cruiserweight world title challenger and top 15 heavyweight Brian Minto.
I could say that Dillian Whyte is definitely, he's always, when I fought him, he was looking for the big shots. He does work behind the jab. I just think that Dillian Whyte's going to try to pressure him and try to, you know, put the heat on Joseph and get him out of there.
One thing with Dillian, as you said, he's very hittable and he's prone to overthrowing his shots and sort of pausing a little bit in the mid-range and being exposed. Is that something you think Parker should be able to capitalise on with his speed?
Yeah, definitely. His hands are super fast. I probably haven't been in the ring with somebody, I mean, in the heavyweights as fast as him, and some cruiserweights too. I mean, he's got really good hand speed, and I think speed is power. Definitely can, you know, he can land that punch that he doesn't see. I mean, I got hit by it a couple times in the ring, and I found myself on the mat, but I didn't see the punches coming. So they do, you know, definitely surprise you. Parker, he's got the power, so I think it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, depending on whose night it is, and definitely the game plan is a big factor in this fight.
Our champ, Joseph Parker, he's got renowned hand speed. What else does he bring?
Well, look, I don't think you can underestimate that hand speed. That's a huge factor. Minto himself said, you know, he's quicker than any heavyweight he's faced and a lot of cruiserweights he's faced. So that's something that Dillian Whyte must counter really early. He moves well. Joe moves particularly well around the ring. We saw some great improvement in that against Anthony Joshua, and a lot of people missed it. He makes people miss, and he's got pretty good head movement when he chooses to do it. But the thing that he's really lacked in his past few fights is that intensity, that hunger. And perhaps now that he's in a position where he's going to be a challenger as opposed to the title holder, he hasn't got as much, I guess, to lose by taking the risk of getting in there and trading.
Let's go back to his last fight out, and it was against AJ in terms of the loss and what he needs to do better. Drag into this fight against Dillian Whyte.
Well, quite clearly, he needs to bite down on his mouthguard sometimes and trade. But that's not reckless. He, rather than sort of wild, furious anger, he actually needs cold fury. He needs to dictate where the fight takes place, and when it's time to bite down on the mouthguard, he needs to trade. But he also needs to dictate when he holds, when he shifts, and he needs to move Whyte around the ring so he can turn him into shots and draw him onto a big punch.
I'm a little bit worried about the talk from Joseph Parker and saying he wants to get out. He wants to show people and really put on a show. And he's even saying which round he's going to knock him out. And does that give added pressure and too much pressure going into this bout?
Well, again, talking to Joe a couple of times, I think he's conscious that he's a boxer. He's not a brawler. I think he knows that he has a game plan he needs to stick to. But that's one of the key things right from the outset is what's his intent, and also is that intent or the pressure he feels to put on a good performance going to make him too tight and take too many risks against a guy who loves to brawl, so he doesn't want to fight that game on his own.
Okay, Mike, you are Kevin Barry. What is the strategy to win this weekend at O2 Arena?
Dare I say it, he's going to have to double up the jab. He's going to have to keep that jab low. If he just throws single shots, Dillian Whyte moves his head really well. He moves from side to side, and that's when his counter-punching comes in. So doubling him up off the jab keeps him off balance. He also cannot afford to go back in a straight line. Moves back in a straight line, he hits the ropes, and that's where Dillian Whyte is most at home. He's got to keep him turning, keep a little bit of distance between them so he can throw and accelerate those hand speed.
And earlier this week, we went and spoke to Joe and asked him, how do you make opponents pay for their mistakes?
And then with the last fight we avoided big shots, but there was a lot of opportunity to fire back and, you know, catch them when they were sort of lunging or when they were, you know, making mistakes. And so in the past, that's been a sort of weakness, but I think with this camp, we've worked on it, we've strengthened it, and we've seen it a lot in the sparring that we had with the sparring partners we brought in.
Plenty of support behind our champion, Joseph Parker. But for me, the question is, Mike, how hard is it to win in the UK?
Well, you've got to say, Joe, to get the decision with Hughie Fury, generally speaking, the decisions are pretty good over there. But, you know, you've got to have a dominant performance. Joe does not want to let this go close, let this go to the cards. He needs really to be absolutely dominant if it's on points. Ideally, he needs to take it out of the judge's hand. Joe doesn't just need a dominant performance for the scorecards. He really needs a really dominant performance just to ensure his brand is up there again. He needs to be exciting again. He needs to be a guy that we all want to watch.
So he wants to win by knockout, but can he win convincingly enough just by his boxing pedigree?
Look, if his speed and his game plan is on point and he can keep Dillian Whyte off balance, yes, he can. But, you know, this is a classic fight. Once again, does Parker's skill match up with Whyte's will?
Well, we're talking about the UK, so we got on the ground with one of the UK correspondents who knows his stuff very well over there in terms of the industry, Glenn McCrory.
You know, both these guys' career is pretty much hanging on this fight. Yes, Joseph Parker's 26, and yes, he can come again. But, you know, it's going to be very difficult after two back-to-back losses. Dillian Whyte will be more prepared to have a dogfight. He'll be more prepared to go down into the trenches. I totally know that Joseph Parker can do the same thing. He hasn't shown it a lot, and he certainly didn't show it, and that was a big criticism in the Joshua fight. It was, you know, it's the world heavyweight title, you're about to lose yours. It's for, you know, to gain 3 more world title belts. Show me some fire, show me some anger, show me some real fight. And he didn't do that. And is that going to be the problem in this fight? Because Whyte will do that. Whyte will go down. You know, he'll go out on his shield. He will fight to the very last. So that's why I say in this fight, it could really come down to who wants it more.
There you go, the words from Glenn McCrory himself, a do or die, which means for you, what is your prediction, Mike?
Look, I'm with a lot of people in that this is a 50-50 fight. It's got a lot of different machinations and way the fight can go. But for mine, I think Parker's speed will be a little bit too much. And I'm predicting what he absolutely needs, which is a mid to late round KO stoppage, Joseph Parker.
Well, Mike, I'm a little bit more biased than you. I think 60-40 in the favour of Joseph Parker. And it doesn't matter how he wins, but I think it's going to be by knockout. You're excited, I'm excited, and I know you're at home too. So tune in this weekend, Sunday morning, 5 a.m. on Sky Arena.